mutual aid calls for a total of 36 calls for service. And that makes mutual aid calls a total of 13% of our overall. Town of Eagle calls 37%, Village of Eagle calls 28%, and Village of North Prairie 21% of our overall call volume. For May to date, we had, until this, I did this yesterday, so until today, we had 21 EMS calls, now 23, 8 fire calls, 3 fire EMS calls, 9 in the town of Eagle, 7 in the Village of Eagle, 13 in the Village of North Prairie, and 3 mutual aid. We're not going to let Katie work alone on Saturdays anymore, because that's what happens. Is they had 5 calls for service last Saturday when she was working part-time at the Village of North Prairie. For a total call volume of 32, now 34 as of today. The one call of note for May was last Thursday, as we talked about. I did include the final press release that was sent out to all of the news media, anyone who got a hold of me. I did get a link. Peter Jensen sent me a link from the United Kingdom that we were on a TV station, a news brief in the United Kingdom. I got a phone call from a German radio station and told him that I no sprechen die Deutschland, because I don't speak any German whatsoever. He spoke very broken English, but he wanted to do a radio interview with me, and I declined. So I figured, I sent him the press release and said, here, you can read this and however you want to do that. But this was truly worldwide an event that happened with Somerset Marine. I've pretty much been down there every day since Thursday. Thursday we got there at 7:44 per the press release. I finally left. Steve came down after his full-time job, and we left about 8 o'clock that night. We did order a fence from Kelman, 1,300 feet of construction fencing to be put around the entire building for looters and for protection, because that is a complete and full collapse zone. It's a metal building. All the metal structures and everything are ready to cave in. We had a total of 29 tenders on the road, over 100 firefighters on that scene at any given point, and we moved 1.1 million gallons of water. At one point during the day, we did have to transition from the Village of Eagle water system, because we were taxing it. It wasn't out of water, but we were starting to tax it where it was just about at half. Steve's alarms were going off, and he couldn't get the pumps to catch up. So we just shut our system down here at Eagle for a little bit, went down to Eagle Spring Lake, and started filling down there. And then we were also filling out of the Village of Mukwonago for a short time. The Eagle Spring Lake dry hydrant had a malfunction. And so then we came back to the village, contacted with Steve Deegan, and he said, yep, we're good to go. We got the water tower back up to 3/4, and the pumps were holding at that time because we were doing Mukwonago and the Village of Eagle water system. So again, a total of 1.1 million gallons of water estimated to put out that fire. We did end up going to the 5th box for tenders only. In the 3rd box. So we called Mavis, the mutual aid box alarm system, for a 3rd box for tenders only, and they said, Chief, we're already into the 5th box, which means that people were taking passes because they didn't have the staffing to send people, or weren't able to get people here because they were on their own incidents. So we went to an interdivisional box for a strike team out of Division 101, which is the Kenosha County area. And so we had a tender here from Pleasant Prairie, a tender here from Bristol, and a lot of tenders here from the northern counties. One of the apparatus we had on scene was really cool. We're going to move them up. That was the truck from Delavan. Delavan just purchased this vehicle about 1.5 years ago, used from an airport. And they were sitting at our station in change of quarters, like they're asked to do, to stand by in case we get another call for an engine. And it had a piercing nozzle on it. And they bought it from an airport, and it was made to pierce the side of an airplane before an explosion were to happen, to put the fire out inside of an airplane without firefighters getting injured or or, yeah, either way, or making them go inside. That piercing nozzle was able, because that's an all-steel building down there, and it was able to actually punch through the side of the building and spray water inside to help mitigate the fire. And the things he was doing, it's all remote control, the things he was doing with that arm and getting it in at angles, and it was really, really cool. We had the McQuantico truck here almost all day, their ladder. We had the North Prairie 3571 was back. Man, that thing can pump some water yet. It's impressive how much water that can do. We had 2 engine operations set up with 4 pieces of LDH feeding all these big trucks, not to mention the hose lines and everything else. We did transport 2 patients that were employees. The news media got a little misled because one of the employees is an off-duty firefighter, and he had a firefighter t-shirt on, so they assumed that he was one of us. He was an employee that got transported. We did have 3 firefighters that got treated on scene for heat exhaustion, but we're all back to work the next day. I called all their chiefs and said, hey, how they doing, with some follow-up. Again, I've been either on the phone with the owner. There's actually 2 owners down there, with the owner, making sure that they can get in, they're trying to get their equipment out, get everything back to Madison. He's trying to lease another building temporarily so he can keep operations moving forward and get all of his employees back to work as best as possible. Right now, it is still under investigation. The ATF has been in there, the State Fire Marshal's Office, Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. The forensics team for Waukesha County Sheriff's Department is working on a DVR that was recovered from the inside after the fire was out. We were able to go in and get some of the personal items of the owner in a fireproof safe with a special crew of going in for collapse and to do that. So they're working on getting the actual video of the explosion off of this DVR. It was very much burnt. They're hoping they can put a new wire connectors on it to plug it into another computer to get this video. We'll see if that happens. So we also had OSHA there. Immediately, within 2 hours, OSHA was walking around the building trying to do some outside pictures, and a bunch of insurance companies and adjusters. There is a building insurance company because the building was owned separately from the contents, so there's 2 different businesses that were in there, so there's 3 insurance companies there, plus there's workers' comp adjusters and just a whole bunch of insurance adjusters and investigators that have been swarming it. The last one is going to go in tomorrow, and that is of the secondary owner of the to go in and do an investigation on their own. We know that they were working on a barge, repairing a barge, and one of their barges, what they do is they have big forks on it, and they go in and they have hydraulic lifts, and it's to be on a lake, and they pull up to a pier and literally lift the pier out of the water and then drive it forward and bring it up to shore and set it on the shore. Well, this particular barge that they were working on, one of the hydraulic rams on this side, the locking mechanism broke, and they were welding on that to repair it when the explosion happened. Unknown fuel source at this point, per the ATF and the State Fire Marshal's Office, and that is under investigation, and we're hoping that we can get some of that video to find out exactly what happened. So, any questions on the fire?
Chief, I don't have any questions on the fire, but you also had news coverage from Italy.
Okay, that one I didn't know about.
Yeah, Rome gave you some pretty good coverage, and I'm not quite sure where they got their footage, but they had some unique coverage there. And just a little feedback from Wisconsin Emergency Management is that they were bored stiff because although we did have an incident management, a couple people from an incident management team down there, they did not have to activate their regional center. They did not have to activate Madison because it was handled so well here at that site. You know, they were prepared to, bring support in, but it wasn't needed, which I think is a testament to the Gilmarian Fire Department. You know, that's one hell of a blaze in a situation that was, wrapped up in a day. I think that's pretty impressive.
We did have, a lot of help when we went to those Mavis cards and bringing people in. Art was operations for 3/4 of the day. So it was a team effort for everybody had on that scene to mitigate it. So the best takeaway for that scene is that there was the one serious injury. We transported a second one that was involved in the blast, got thrown 20 feet up against the wall. He was treated and released immediately. Nobody died, which with all of the explosions going on during that fire, we counted 22 individual explosions inside that building while we were fighting that fire. And so we just kept everybody out, kept everybody as far back as we could. And while there were a couple of employee injuries, that was the best outcome, is that there were no deaths and no firefighter injuries on top of it all. So, thank you. A couple other real quick things. We finally got approved for our BP fleet cards. After almost 5 months of dealing with them and fighting with them, I finally asked Rob Chapman to say, can you do something? Can you do something? So he made a phone call. A lady from a local area here, BP office, called me and said, what do you need? And so we applied, and we've got a credit line now with BP. We're just waiting for the cards to get here, so we can start filling up back in for the Eagle, not driving over to North Prairie. We can start filling up at the BP station again as well. So, and all the cards will be in all of the Station 35 North Prairie apparatus as well. So if they're here working, they can fill up here as well. So we'll have 2 different fill sites then. Janine gave me bad news today, and that's we were denied for the credit card from Citizens Bank. I'm going to have to ask for an agenda item next month to discuss what further action we can do. Cindy Vukodenovich came back and said we can't give you one for 2 years until you've been in business for 2 years. And she tried, Janine talked to her on the phone, she tried and everything that she could, and Cindy's always been good to us as Eagle Fire Department, as a district, Citizens Bank has, but even with all of our bank accounts there, they won't give us one for another 18 or so months. So just to be aware that we can't do anything with it tonight, but I'll have to put that on the agenda for next month to say, okay, now what? For a credit card or debit card, something to be able to make purchases with a card. So we got trained in all of our new meds. I talked about that. We did get trained in all of our new meds that we're able to give. We're waiting for the hospital to bring them out, actually for us to get them ordered. We're working with Waukesha Memorial Hospital on that. And we also have a few more people that weren't at that particular training to get trained on it before we can release it full, but that'll be coming up shortly. Doc Schultz, our medical director, is going to make sure that we get trained in all the ventilators. He's waiting for all the local departments to get all their ventilators in. We have ours and all of the parts and pieces. There's some that don't have some of the parts that came with them. The state didn't send them out. So we are waiting to get all of the parts and pieces in, and then he's going to send a team out and train each individual department or together on how to use these ventilators for BiPAP and all of the different functions of them. So we do have those, but it'll be a few months before we can get those out in action. I think that's all I have.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
I'll second. Motion by Don, second by Peter, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 7:40.